Hi friends, my name is Maruti and I'm the co-founder of Kraku. CAT response sheet has come and there are many students who have done well and also many students who have not done well. For the students who have not done well and who are feeling demotivated, I just wanted to tell you a personal story. The first time I actually took CAT was in CAT 2007. Now, a backdrop of it was that I was always a good student. I got into IIT, I got a very good rank in the JEE examination. But in IIT, I didn't study well. There were many reasons for it. One of the reasons was that I was pretty intimidated by my peer group in IIT because till then I was always a topper. But once I went into IIT, I felt that everybody in the class was actually much smarter than me. And I used to feel intimidated, and for some reason, I gave up in my first year. And even when I tried to come back and try to study well, it was just demoralizing because my CGPA was already pretty low. With this backdrop, when I was giving CAT in my final year of BTech, I felt that this was my one chance to actually come back. It was like my redemption story because I felt that my CGPA was pretty poor. I was probably one of the bottom in the class. And I also knew that my job after I graduate out of IIT would not be a good job because the placements haven't happened. But because I was not doing very well, I knew that the job I would get would not be very good. With this in my mind, I prepared well for CAT and I took it in CAT 2007 and I did very well in Quant, I did well in LRDA. But I couldn't clear the sectional cutoff for verbal. The sectional cutoff in those days used to be 95 percentile and I could get only 78 percentile. And in 2007, it was pen and paper. So immediately after I came out of the examination hall, I knew that I was not clearing the examination. At that time, it felt crushing because I pinned a lot of hopes on this examination. And immediately I knew that I was not doing well. But my placements happened a few weeks later. And as expected, I didn't do well in the placements. Many times I was not shortlisted because my CGPA was low. And in some cases where they conducted some aptitude test or something and where I got shortlisted for the interview, because I was pretty underconfident in those days, because I was not doing very well in my college, that underconfidence also seeped in. And even when I got a chance in the interviews, I was not able to perform well. And when the CAT results came, as expected, I didn't clear the cutoff. And even the shortlist came and I didn't get a single shortlist. A few weeks later, by some strange miracle, I got a letter from IIM Bangalore saying that I was actually shortlisted for the GDPI session. And suddenly I felt this was one chance. This was a chance that came completely out of the blue because based on my background, even though I had good 10th and 12th scores, my graduation score was not good and I didn't clear the verbal cutoff. So I don't know why I got that shortlist, but I felt that this was one chance. So I prepared very well for the interview. I tried to give it my best shot. When I entered the interview hall, within the first 2-3 minutes, I was just so nervous and I was completely tongue-tied. Even when the professors who were asking me questions were actually very nice people, they tried to calm me down, but it was a horrible interview. In the first 3 minutes, I knew that I was not getting selected because it was just that bad. There was, you just can't come back from that kind of a start, where I was not able to speak properly, I was stuttering, I was trembling. But the professors were very nice people, so they made me calm down. The interview continued for 10 to 15 minutes because they didn't want to send me out immediately after I entered the room because probably they felt that it would have been traumatic for me. But they kept me for 10-15 minutes. They were asking me some simple questions, some personal questions, nothing about either MBA or anything like that. And after 10 minutes while I was leaving, they gave me a chocolate also, which I remember. I came out of the interview room thinking, actually feeling completely down. A few months later, I got a job. I joined Rediff and things started turning after I joined Rediff because for the first time, I didn't feel like I was not intimidated in the room. Every day in IIT, I used to feel that everybody else is much smarter than me. But in Rediff, for some reason, I felt that most of the people over here actually on the other, they used to think that I was actually a pretty good coder. They used to think that because I was from IIT, I would be like a super smart. All of that was probably not true. I don't think I was a very good coder. I don't think I was a good coder. I think I was a decent coder. But still, they expected a lot from me and they gave me a lot of responsibility, which actually helped increase my own self-worth. Similarly, when I actually got my first paycheck, I suddenly felt a lot more confident. Because till then there was also this guilt that I was letting down my parents, where I was getting money from my father, but I was just not studying in my college. So I used to have that guilt inside me. But once I started earning money, the money or the salary that I was getting was actually very low, but it still made me financially independent. And once I became financially independent, I became more confident. Around that time, I started preparing again for CAT. And then I went and talked to one of my friends who did well in CAT the earlier year. That guy used to come from a pretty good school, so his English was very smooth. I, on the other hand, didn't come from a very good school, so my English was never my strong point. And in those days, we also used to have grammar and sentence correction, which used to have a lot of weightage. I asked him, what exactly did you do? Because you did very well in verbal. So he told me that, okay, see, RCs you study like this. And for grammar, he told me that he didn't know all the rules. He didn't know what is parallelism. He didn't know what exactly is correct, what exactly is wrong. But he told me that when he heard a sentence, immediately he would know whether it is grammatically correct or not. he would just know, he doesn't know all of these rules and all, but because he was so smooth in communicating in English, because he has read a lot of books, he just knows when he hears a sentence whether it is grammatically correct or not. I thought about what he said and I realized that is actually true. Then I went home, and just from that point of time, my goal was very simple. I felt that I would again clear the cutoff for quant and LRDA. But verbal was my weak point. But I felt if I focus completely on verbal, that is the only thing that is stopping me from getting into a top end. That was how I approached my verbal preparation from that day on. And I used to watch a lot of English movies because I wanted to get better at verbal. I used to buy a lot of these English novels. I used to sit in my room alone and I would read the book out loud because I wanted to hear how a well-formed English sentence actually sounds like. Because I wanted to get used to it. I wanted to develop that intuition about whether a sentence is grammatically correct or not. I did all of it, and the next time in CAT, I actually scored 97 percentile in verbal, which was a very big feat for me because till then I always used to consider verbal as my very weak point. And like I mentioned earlier, the sectional cutoff was 95 in those days. Now it is 80. So for me, just about scraping through verbal was not an option. I had to do well in verbal. That is the reason I put in so much effort in verbal. And I also did well in quant and LRDA, and finally I got a lot of calls. By a twist of fate, I got calls from all black institutes except Bangalore. I don't know why that happened, but this time when I got all the calls, I was quite certain that I have to do well, and I was completely motivated. Last time when I was preparing for my IIM Bangalore call also, it was very defensive. I felt that I didn't deserve to get that call. I felt that maybe there was a mistake. I also was a little worried that when I go to the interview hall, they would actually tell me you're not qualified. I don't know why you came here. Maybe that was a mistake. Because all of these things were running at the back of my mind. But the second time when I got most of the calls because I did well, this time I knew that I had to do well in the interviews, and I prepared tremendously for the interviews. Preparing for interviews also is extremely important. I'll just give you a simple analysis of how I prepared. I used to make a list of the questions that they would ask. For example, I used to think that the first question they would ask me is, tell me about yourself. Then I prepared an answer for it. And once I prepared an answer for it, I used to mug it up completely by heart it. But I also used to prepare on the presentation. I would not make it sound like this was a very well prepared answer. I used to also rehearse it well so that it would sound extempore. Once I was saying this, I would say this answer in front of a mirror, and I would imagine myself to be a third person. I would think that, okay, if I'm a third person who is listening to this answer, what can the follow-up questions be? So then I would make a list of these follow-up questions that, okay, if this is the answer that somebody is giving, I would probably ask him about this particular thing or this particular thing or this particular thing. Once I prepared a list of those 3 questions or 4 questions, for each one of those 3 questions or 4 questions, again I would prepare a long detailed answer. I would by heart it completely, and I would also by heart the presentation so that it would come across as an impromptu answer. After putting in so much effort, I converted nearly all the calls. I think I didn't convert only IIM Kozhikode because I think that was the first interview. I think I was also a little arrogant in the interview. There were many reasons, but the second time I was able to convert most of the calls. And then I went into IIM Ahmedabad. The whole point of all of this story is, if I had converted my IIM Bangalore call the first time and gotten into IIMB, I would have joined in June of 2008. All of you know that Lehman Brothers collapsed in September of 2008. So nearly all of my seniors had very bad summer placements, and it continued even in their final placements. So if I'd actually joined an IIM in 2008, it would have been terrible for me. Because I joined 1 year later, the market was back up. I got a very good summer placement. I joined Barclays as an intern. I was able to get a full-time job, and I joined Barclays even after graduating. Another thing that happened, which was a kind twist of fate, was that I actually met my wife, Saili, in IIM Ahmedabad because she also joined the same year as me. If I joined 1 year earlier, probably I would have never met her. She also messed up her CAT the first time, so she also joined along with me. And it was a nice twist of fate that I actually found a good job. I also found love in the campus, and I was able to marry her. Things worked out well for me. I'm telling you all of this story because even if you feel very demotivated right now, even if you feel that you missed out on a chance to get into a very good college, things might improve. You don't know. When one door closes, you might feel that this is the end of the world, but it is definitely not the end of the world. There are so many other opportunities, and this might actually be a blessing for you in disguise. Maybe you'll realize that this failure, 10 years later, you would actually think helped you quite a lot. It happened with me, so I'm sure it can happen with you. All the best, be positive.